Severe weather warnings across northern Australia. Tropical cyclone developing off the Kimberley coast. Multiple low pressure systems. Heavy rainfall expected. That's the situation we are dealing with this Thursday, the 22nd of January 2026. Right now, conditions across the country are anything but calm. And if you've been watching the weather maps over the last few days, you'll understand why there's so much going on. Multiple areas of low pressure surrounding Australia. A tropical system in the Coral Sea. Another strengthening off Western Australia and building heat across the eastern states. Worth paying close attention to. Let me start with where we are right now. The satellite imagery shows extensive cloud cover across northern Australia. Monsoonal shower activity pushing through the Northern Territory and the northern parts of Western Australia. Out in the Coral Sea, that tropical low has moved faster than originally expected, currently sitting roughly at the latitude of Cairns. Now, before anyone gets concerned, this is not a Queensland problem. More on that in a moment. Across central and northern Queensland, early morning thunderstorm activity. Nothing too significant at this stage. Down south, a weak cold front pushed through Victoria and Tasmania overnight. Tasmania copped some decent thunderstorms through the small hours. Nothing major, but enough to provide a bit of relief. The pressure forecast tells the real story here. Have a look at how much low pressure is surrounding Australia right now. Those small patches of high pressure down in the Great Australian Bight, that S basically it. Everything else is low pressure. And when you start getting into those really deep blues on the pressure charts below 1,000 hectopascals, you are looking at quite strong low pressure systems. Not quite tropical cyclone strength, but significant nonetheless. We've got troughs everywhere. The tropical low in the Coral Sea associated with the monsoon trough running east. A strengthening system off the Kimberley coast. The monsoon trough building across the Northern Territory. Low pressure running down the West Australian coastline. Another trough through the central Northern Territory extending into southwestern Queensland. Everywhere experiencing low pressure right now is either going to see warm temperatures in the subtropical regions or wet weather in the tropics. Fair bit happening. That weak high in the Great Australian Bight is bringing some stability to parts of South Australia and Victoria, taking the edge off the heat that S been building across interior Australia. But that S temporary. The pattern S about to shift again. Let me address the Coral Sea system first, because I know some of you will have seen it and wondered. This is not a threat to Queensland. Not a system you need to worry about. It is still a tropical low, definitely worth monitoring, but concerns about Queensland impacts are unfounded based on current data. Looking at the satellite loop from the last hour, it has a ragged system. Lot of displaced convection, shower and thunderstorm activity sitting well south of the actual low-level centre. That S unfavourable for intensification. The rotation is broad and disorganised. Wind observations are weak. Willis Island recording 30 kilometres per hour from the southeast. That S barely above 15 knots. Nowhere near tropical cyclone status and not expected to reach it either. Forecast modelling keeps this system fairly weak throughout today. It might tighten up slightly tonight into tomorrow morning, but with high pressure building into the Tasman Sea, it's going to be pushed westward toward the Queensland coast with very limited impact. Maybe a few showers and thunderstorms for coastal areas. Nothing significant. By the weekend, this system gets absorbed into the broader monsoon pattern. Another low is expected to develop in the Gulf of Carpentaria, and the monsoon trough will strengthen considerably. The Coral Sea system will lose all its energy and become essentially meaningless by Saturday or Sunday. Just to be clear on wind speeds, this system will bring winds of 30 to 40 kilometres per hour, gusts possibly reaching 55 to 60 kilometres per hour at absolute maximum. Not a threat to the Queensland coastline. I know when people hear tropical low in the Coral Sea, it can sound alarming, but this particular system warrants no preparations whatsoever. Now, the more interesting development is that strengthening monsoon trough, particularly if a low does form in the Gulf of Carpentaria, that S looking increasingly likely based on multiple forecast models. If that happens, far north Queensland can expect a couple of days of wet weather from Sunday, persisting through Monday and Tuesday. Monsoonal inflow will bring widespread rainfall, not cyclonic but persistent. The forecast models have been remarkably accurate lately, particularly for Tropical Cyclone Koji. Some of the global models nailed that landfall location 11 or 12 days out. Looking at the current model runs, there's good agreement on a Gulf low developing over the coming days. Each model shows estimated low pressure areas clustering in that region. The European model, the American GFS, Access, they were all showing similar patterns. That gives me confidence this monsoon enhancement is on the cards. For those in Cape York, the top end, anywhere in the northern tropics, you are looking at building rainfall from this weekend onwards. Not flash flooding necessarily, but sustained wet weather. The build-up continues. Now let's talk about the Western Australia situation, because this is where things get genuinely serious. A tropical low off the Kimberley coast is organising rapidly. This system has my full attention. Current location is roughly 300 kilometres northwest of Broome. Over the last 24 hours, this system has developed considerably. The visible satellite imagery this morning shows a vertically aligned system, which indicates it AE organising well. There is a defined low-level circulation developing. The shower and thunderstorm activity is wrapping around the centre much more tightly than yesterday. When you see intense convection developing around a storm centre like this, that a strong signal the system wants to intensify. And conditions ahead of this storm are favourable. Sea surface temperatures are very warm, around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius. Wind shear is at healthy levels, not too high. In fact, there's an upper level trough approaching which will enhance the storm S outflow. Think of it like improving the exhaust system on an engine. Helps the system breathe, helps it intensify. Based on current modelling, this system will continue strengthening throughout today and tonight. Landfall is expected somewhere between Broome and Derby around midday Saturday local time, most likely as a Category 1, possibly Category 2, and we cannot rule out Category 3 strength. For those in Broome, Derby and surrounding communities, particularly around Cape Levesque and through the Mitchell Plateau, north to Kalumburu, you want to be preparing for a Category 1 tropical cyclone, potentially Category 2. That means tomorrow, Friday, spend some time securing loose items around the property. Strap down anything that could become a projectile in winds up to 100 to 125 kilometres per hour. Looking at the ensemble forecast tracks, there's a solid cluster of landfall points on the Dampier Peninsula north of Broome. And here's why that matters. When a tropical cyclone makes landfall, the strongest winds are always on the right-hand side of the track in the southern hemisphere, because that S where the forward motion adds to the rotational winds. The onshore winds on that northeastern flank are completely unprotected. So if this system comes ashore on the Dampier Peninsula as expected, Cape Levesque and communities to the north and northeast of the landfall point will experience the most significant wind impacts. Derby sits slightly more protected, southwest of the likely landfall. Broome, unless this track shifts significantly southward, which current modelling suggests is unlikely, will be on the more sheltered side. Even if this develops into a severe tropical cyclone, Broome is still likely to escape with Category 1 impacts, possibly Category 2 at absolute worst. I don't want people in Broome panicking, but I also don't want complacency. Prepare sensibly, secure your property, stock up on essentials, but there's no need for alarm. Derby, Uree, slightly more exposed than Broome, but still somewhat protected compared to areas directly on the Dampier Peninsula. The real ground zero for wind speeds will be Cape Levesque and the coastal communities north of the landfall point. Important to note, on the Australian tropical cyclone scale, a Category 3 severe tropical cyclone has sustained winds of 120 to 165 kilometres per hour, with gusts significantly higher. If this system does reach that strength, which is possible given the very warm sea temperatures and favourable environment, it's a serious weather event. Not catastrophic like Tracy was for Darwin in 74, but serious enough to cause structural damage to poorly built structures, bring down trees, cut power for days. By tonight, Thursday night, we should have definitive answers about how strong this system will be at landfall. Either way, it's going to drop significant rainfall and bring destructive wind gusts to parts of the Kimberley coast. I strongly recommend making preparations today and tomorrow. After landfall, the system is expected to track south through the Pilbara region, then into the northern interior. It will likely hold tropical cyclone status for some time as it moves inland, weakening to an organised tropical low as it pushes further south. The forecast track suggests it'll move through remote Indigenous communities before reaching the Great Central Highway around Warburton and Giles. Rainfall totals from this system are substantial. Across the north and south interior, we're re-looking at 40 to 80 millimetres widespread, with isolated falls reaching 120 millimetres early next week. If you're replanning travel through this region, anywhere from Laverton across to Uluru and the Olgas, I do recommend checking the forecast daily. 120 millimetres doesn't sound like much compared to coastal areas, but out here it doesn't take much to damage road networks and cause flooding. The models are in good agreement on this rainfall, so it is a genuine concern for travellers. Back to the eastern states, heat is building. A ridge of high pressure is strengthening across the Tasman Sea, and that S going to direct hot northerly winds down the eastern seaboard over the coming days. Across Queensland, from Brisbane north, temperatures have been climbing all week. That warm, humid air mass is well established. Sydney S been warm as well, 32 degrees this week. That heat continues. By the weekend, temperatures across coastal New South Wales push into the mid to high 30s. For areas like the Central Coast, Newcastle, even parts of Western Sydney, we're re-looking at 36 to 39 degrees on Sunday. Uncomfortable conditions. The concern with this heat building across the east is the potential for severe thunderstorms. When you get that combination of heat, moisture and atmospheric instability, you create the perfect environment for storms. Not guaranteed, but the risk is there. The Bureau of Meteorology will be monitoring closely, and if severe thunderstorm warnings are issued, take them seriously. For those further south in Victoria and Tasmania, you are in a more stable pattern for now. That weak high in the Bight is keeping things relatively calm. Melbourne S been pleasant, low to mid-20s. Tasmania cooler still, with overnight minimums dropping below zero in some areas. Hobart saw -2 this morning. Frost across the northern suburbs. South Australia sitting in between. Adelaide S had perfect weather, 24 degrees and sunny. That 1T last. By early next week, another system moves through, bringing a return to warmer, more unsettled conditions. Western Australia, outside of that tropical cyclone, the rest of the state remains dry. Perth and the southwest have had virtually no rain for 3 months. Dams are getting low. Gardens are struggling. This dry spell continues for now. No significant rain in the immediate forecast for Perth or the southwest. The monsoon moisture stays well north. Let me address fire danger briefly. With the heat building across eastern Australia and conditions remaining dry across much of the interior and the west, fire danger ratings will be elevated over the coming days. It's not catastrophic at this stage, but if you are in a bushfire-prone area, now is the time to ensure your property is prepared. Clear gutters, remove fuel loads near buildings, have your bushfire plan ready. Total fire bans are possible for some districts over the weekend if conditions deteriorate. Looking ahead to next week, the pattern remains active. That Gulf of Carpentaria low I mentioned earlier should develop by early next week, enhancing the monsoon across the northern tropics. Far North Queensland, the top end. Expect persistent wet weather from Sunday onwards. Not necessarily heavy every day, but consistent rainfall. The tropical cyclone currently developing off Western Australia will be inland by Sunday, tracking through the Pilbara and into Central Australia. Significant rainfall follows its path. Remote communities in the Northern Territory and Western Australia should prepare for potential road closures and flooding. Across the eastern states, that heat persists into early next week before a southerly change brings relief midweek. That change will be welcome after several days of uncomfortable heat and humidity. For those asking about longer range patterns, we're still in the monsoon season, which typically runs through to April. El Niño has broken down and we're moving toward neutral conditions in the Pacific. That generally means a more active monsoon, which is what we're seeing. Multiple tropical lows, enhanced rainfall across the north. This pattern is likely to continue through February. The southern annular mode is also playing a role. When at S in a positive phase, as it is now, it tends to push weather systems and rainfall towards southern Australia. But with the monsoon so active, northern regions are getting the bulk of the moisture at present. Indian Ocean dipole is neutral, which doesn't give us a strong signal either way for rainfall across southern and central Australia. The main driver right now is that very active monsoon, supported by warm sea surface temperatures and favourable atmospheric patterns. A few practical points to finish. If you in the Kimberley region, particularly Broome to Derby and communities on the Dampier Peninsula, preparation today and tomorrow is critical. Secure loose items. Stock up on water, food, batteries, fuel. Charge devices. Fill bathtubs with clean water in case the supply gets cut. If the power goes, that gives you drinking water and flushing water. For those in far North Queensland expecting wet weather from the monsoon enhancement, ensure drainage around your property is clear. Check gutters, downpipes, stormwater drains. Persistent rainfall can cause localised flooding even without a cyclone. Eastern states dealing with building heat and potential severe thunderstorms, stay hydrated. Limit outdoor activity during peak heat hours. Check on elderly neighbours and mates. If storms do develop, be prepared for sudden wind gusts, heavy rain, possible hail. Secure outdoor furniture. Bring in anything that could blow away. Remote travellers in Central Australia, keep tabs on road conditions. Main highways like the Stuart Highway should remain open, but more remote tracks could become impassable with heavy rain. The Bureau of Meteorology and state road authorities will have the latest information. This is a complex pattern. Multiple systems, multiple threats across different parts of the country. It asks what you expect during an active monsoon season. Not unprecedented, but definitely worth your attention. The key system to watch over the next 48 hours is that developing tropical cyclone off the Kimberley coast. By Friday evening, we'll have a much clearer picture of its intensity and exact track. The Bureau will issue formal warnings and advice. Follow their guidance. The Coral Sea system is a non-event for Queensland. The Gulf development bears watching for far North Queensland, but 1T threatens southern areas. The heat and potential storms across the east are uncomfortable but manageable with sensible precautions. You've all been through weather events before. You know how to prepare. You know when to take things seriously and when not to panic. This situation deserves preparation, particularly in Western Australia, but it's not cause for alarm. I'll continue monitoring these systems closely. Conditions are changing rapidly, as they do with tropical weather. What S accurate today might shift by tomorrow. That S the nature of forecasting in these patterns. But based on the best available data from the Bureau of Meteorology, the global forecast models and current observations, this is where we stand. Stay safe, prepare sensibly, take unnecessary risks, and keep an eye on official warnings from the Bureau and emergency services. They'll have the most current information as these systems develop. For those in the path of the Western Australian cyclone, you've got today and tomorrow to prepare. Use that time wisely. For everyone else, stay informed, but let it dominate your day. Weather S part of life in Australia. We deal with it and get on with things. That S, the situation as it stands this Thursday morning. Complex, active, worth monitoring, but nothing we can handle with proper preparation.